Welcome back to Hosanna Noel. We are so excited to have our special guest on with us today, Rosilyn Rayborn. She is the Senior VP at Citi, as well as the president of AIGA of Dallas-Fort Worth area. Rosilyn, we are so excited to have you on and just talk about your leadership journey with us today. Rosilyn and I have some experience working together, so it's so fun to have
Yes, we do.
a colleague and friend on as well, as we've had leadership experience and journey together. Um,
Yes.
Rosilyn, I know that you have had a lot of corporate experience as well as nonprofit
Yes.
experience. So today, what I would love to dig in is to talk about your corporate experience, specifically with regards to maybe leading teams that you didn't necessarily have expertise in and what that looked like, as well as what does it look like leading in a nonprofit
Oh, that's great.
space as well. But
Yes.
before we get into those nitty gritties, I would just love our audience just to hear a little bit about your journey.
Sure. So my journey started like 20 years ago.
How can that be?
Uh,
You are way too young.
I'm only 20. So my journey started, I would say, on a certain level, it's just like anybody else's journey through leadership. My background is marketing, communication. So anything in that space, social media, digital marketing, kind of just from billboards and all of that kind of stuff at advertising agencies to digital marketing campaigns and account-based marketing. All of that has been in my wheelhouse forever. And then as any good doer, you do and you do and you do and you excel at doing, and then you become a manager. And so that's kind of how I navigated my career, just being a good doer and being passionate about marketing and passionate about communications. And then one day it's like, now you're going to manage all these people that do those things that you know how to do really well, because obviously you know how to do them, so you can manage a team of doers that do those things. And what I think is, and I think that's kind of the typical journey that we all go through, where we're the doer and we're doing so well and we've made it work in the way that works best for us. And then all of a sudden you're managing doers and you realize that everybody doesn't do the same way that you do, right? Like, so it's like all of a sudden it's like, okay, like, why are you doing it that way? You know what I mean? And it's like, well, I was a doer, so I know how this should be done. And there's
Mhm.
little room or thought to, like, a person can put their own spin on the doing. And I think that one of the
Yes.
other things I think is kind of the first part of my management experience was, when you become a manager, it's, you don't feel like you need management training, because typically I think we think, oh, if I need resources or if I need support, that means I lack, right? And so you became a manager because you're doing so well. And so there's not a moment to take a beat and go, do I need to learn how to be a manager? Because everything you're managing, you know how to do. So there's just not that moment of clarity around, should I should take management training, or I need support to learn how to be a good manager, because you've always excelled at everything if you're an achiever. And so that first part of my management experience, I would say, I always think back and I go, oh, I feel bad for the folks that I managed early on, because um, I just I was just such a doer. And I think in that time it was so easy to, instead of having a difficult conversation or thinking strategically, it's like, you get out of the way, I'll just do this because I'm a doer. Like, I'm so used to being a doer that I would kind of hide behind the doing and not really manage folks. And I definitely think about that when hindsight is 2020. And I'm like, oh my God, I was just, if somebody was out of office, I'll do their job. If they didn't meet the requirements, I'll just do it, instead of saying, hey, you're not meeting the requirements. And that was the fastest road to burnout. It just led to so much burnout,
Right.
unnecessarily. So it was just such a bad recipe for burnout. And then I think the turning point for me at that phase of my career was, I have a brother. I have five brothers. I'm the youngest of seven. And one of my brothers is in the restaurant industry, and he is, to put it kindly, he is much more exacting than I am. So, and I was like, I'm like burnt out, and he sleeps really well at night. And I was like, how does he sleep
How
well?
do
And
you do this?
yeah,
Yes.
your job is like, if you know, the food and beverage industry, that's like people's, there's allergies. Like if something goes wrong, the stakes are so much higher than what I'm doing. And I'm like, and he is not stressed. And so I was like, hey, um, I'm struggling with, like, how are you not stressed, and how are you trusting all these people that report to you to do all of these very, very important things, and you know, you need to make sure, like, that, like, there's so much to focus on. And my brother is the best piece of career advice I've ever gotten to this day. He was like, you know, that feeling you get when you, like, do something and you accomplish something really great, and, like, you're like, oh my God, I didn't know that I could do that, and I do it. And I was like, oh my God, yes. He's like, doesn't that feel so great? I was like, yeah. And he was like, why are you taking that away from other people? And
Wow.
it reframed the way I thought about it. It was like, I pride myself on being good to people and being kind to people. And once he reframed that as, like, you're doing these people a disservice, right? And also, I was very aware that I was doing myself a disservice by burning out. Like, I wasn't operating in a sustainable way anyway, but it was like I had, like, convinced myself that I was doing it to be kind to people. And that was this really funny moment of, like, you're not being kind at all. You're doing them a disservice. And nobody's winning in this situation because you're not giving them moments to develop, you know. And so it was like, I always tell people that piece of advice is like, and what I learned was that people actually want to do the work that they signed up to do. So nobody felt great that I was, like, getting in their swim lane and doing their work. Like, they weren't, because, and again, it was like, a lot of it was, and a lot of management and a lot of leadership is having conversations about, hey, you're not meeting the requirements, or your performance isn't satisfactory. And there was a component of that where, because I could do their jobs, I could hide behind doing the work instead of having that conversation about performance, right? And so now they're never going to get better, right? And now I've trained them that I'm just going to do it. And that could definitely make you resent the person, because it's like, I don't even know why she changed that, right? Like, why did she go into my file and completely read why?
Reading the whole entire content.
Yeah. So it was like, and so once he gave me that feedback, I let up, and it was the best thing for me from a mental health and work-life balance perspective. And I was able to see, and again, the surprising thing was, people actually want to do the work that they sign up for. They actually appreciate doing the work that they are responsible for doing. And if once I just kind of got out of their swim lane, and also there's a job for me to do, that's not my job, right? So I was able to kind of learn that. Like I said, that was my first foray into management, and I realized, like, there's no moment of pause. You typically only take that moment when you're at the point of burnout, or when you're at the point of,
Yes.
I need that lifeline. But at the
Mhm.
beginning, there's no indication that, typically we need that when something is wrong, and you just got promoted to a manager. Nothing is wrong, everything is right. And so you don't think about it that way. And so that was my journey anyway.
I love what you said at the very beginning, because I don't think I've specifically identified it, but I feel like you hit the nail on the head. Those who are promoted typically are fantastic independent contributors who are high achievers.
Yes.
And so when you transition, because you're high achiever, if you have to ask for help, or you feel like you can't do it, you feel like you are failing.
You internalize it. Yes, you internalize it. It is
Then you don't want to ask for help, because you don't want anyone to realize, wait a minute, I'm actually not who you think I am.
Yes, the imposter syndrome, right? The imposter syndrome.
Yes.
I got to do everything. I got to know everything. Yeah.
When the reality of it is, you shouldn't know.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's like, this is not my job. My job is a whole different skill set from your job. And anytime that I'm doing your job, I'm actually neglecting my job. That was kind of the thought. I was like, oh, so whenever I'm doing your job, I'm neglecting my actual job, which actually puts me more at risk, right? And so again, there's nobody winning in that situation ever.
No one's winning. Absolutely.
Mhm.
And also, I think from an independent to a manager, what is that job? Did
Exactly.
anyone ever really, like, Did you kind of have to figure it out yourself, or
Yes.
did you know?
Yeah, you have
No?
to figure it out. And it's like, that's what I'm like, these lessons are lessons I learned on the fly going, hold up,
Wait a
there's
minute.
a problem here. This is not sustainable. I can't continue like this. My team is not functioning in a way that's healthy. I have to do something. And then you learn, but there is no that on ramp. But I think there are definitely resources out there. And that's why I wanted to say that, because the resources are there, but there is no indication that you should need them. Like, I didn't think I'm a manager now, I need those resources. I was like, no, I'm doing a great job. I don't need
I can
anything.
figure it. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got promoted because I don't need it. I got promoted because I am qualified to do this, right? And so that's the part that's a little sneaky, because you don't see it, because all of a sudden you're there. And nobody says like, oh, you need this. And it's like, oh, and even if somebody did say it, you'd be like, let me see. I can, like, let me get into it and do it. That's my personality. It's like, I'll figure it out if I need to. If I need the resource, I'll look into it. But if I don't, there's no point, you know?
Right. So that being said, if you could go back to Roz, who is just promoted, what would you tell her?
Oh my God. It would just be like, girl, humble yourself. Humble yourself. Um, you don't have to, be a martyr. Like, trust people. Cause that was, like I said, in hindsight, it was the surprising thing was like, people like doing their jobs. Like, they're here because they like the work they're doing. And that was something that you couldn't have told me. I've been like, no, like, everybody would be happy if I just do their job and they can just log off early and go to the beach. Like, that's what people prefer. That's what I would have said.
Yeah.
And that was how I operated. I was like, every time I did somebody else's job, I was like, they're happy. They're happy about that.
They
And
love it.
it's not true. It was like,
Yeah.
no, they're annoyed that they don't understand why you keep fixing their stuff and not telling them what's wrong. They want you to communicate with them so they can improve, you know? Mhm.
Oh, this is so good. This is so good. I hope that people that are listening are encouraged by this. Those high achievers, there's nothing wrong with you. You were still high achieving. It
Yes,
is just, it isn't a reflection of you. It's
that,
just a matter, it's something new that you
mhm.
have to learn. And that's it. And you're going to be a high achiever in this place too, but you have to
Yes,
learn first. And
yes,
that's okay.
exactly. Precisely.
Yes. Okay. Well, I know that you have also experienced leading teams on the opposite spectrum
Oh, yeah.
of where you weren't necessarily an expert in that, or you
Yes.
couldn't actually jump in and do their job because it was something that wasn't necessarily in your area of expertise.
Yeah.
So, from one extreme to the other, how was that?
Oh my God. Again, very humbling again. Because in this situation, I got placed into a role managing a team of UI UX designers. And it was the most imposter syndrome I've ever felt in my life. And again, and if you guys kind of see a trend, I am really good at convincing myself of things. And so I kind of, like, if I'm on a path, like, I have convinced myself. And in this situation, I remember going, this isn't really imposter syndrome, Rosalyn. You really are an imposter because you really can't do their job. So when my friends would say, this is
Yeah.
imposter syndrome, I would go, no, this is actually real. I literally can't. There's no syndrome to this. I actually am an imposter.
Right.
Like, this is not a debatable. This is a fact, right?
Yeah.
And what happened in this particular journey was this part of my story is much more about the support and the folks around me, because the woman who literally recruited me for the role to manage UI UX designers was like, yeah, this job is not a design job, it's a management job, and I understand your skill set and I really want your skill set to manage this group. And even though I heard her say that, I was so insecure about myself. And so because all of my peers had design experience, right? So all these people who are around me, their skill sets actually align with the work streams that they're managing. Mine's not. And the first thing I did, I'll say, and you'll know this person, I reached out to Shelly, who from our old life, because when she came into the role that I met her in, she had an HR background and she was managing a marketing team. And so I was like very phone a friend frantically,
Right.
Shelly, I need help. I don't know what I'm doing. I am so stressed. And we went to dinner, and Shelly gave me, among a lot of other things, among a pep talk, she gave me a framework. She was like, your job is strategic vision. Roll it. Like, she gave me very tangible things that I needed in the role to be successful. And like, she explained like her journey, and she was like, okay. And like I said, she humored me in the fact that she was like, I believe you're quite capable, but here are the resources that might be supportive to you. So it was actual tangible resources. So she gave me that framework, and I will always be appreciative of that. And then the second thing that happened was not on purpose. When it was just a random day at work, and I was on a call, like a big call at work, and it was early. I mean, I guess it was kind of early in the role. And I'm still insecure. And every call I would have, I would make sure I told people, I don't design. I'm new. Like, it was just this just knee jerk reaction. If I joined a call with you, the first thing I was going to tell you, perhaps even before my name, I don't design. I'm very new here. Like, it was just this like, please don't, it was just this, just so dramatic. And I did that on a call one day, and after the call, one of my peers, her name is Julia. She would be so mortified if I told this story, but whatever. I put a 15-minute meeting on my calendar after this call, and I joined the call, and I'm like, hey, and she goes, girlfriend. And I was like, oh, this is a different conversation. I was like, what? And she goes, I need you to do me a favor. Stop saying that you're new. And she was like, she was like, you are, how did she put it? She was like, you've been here over 90 days. There are people who are newer than you who are hitting the ground running in their job. It's not a good look for you. And she was like, you've been here long enough to understand the role and the requirements for it, and to decide if you want to do it. And I want you to do, like, just anytime you want to think about being new, just know that you aren't the newest kid on the block. There are plenty of people who've been hired since you. And you actually, she was like, and it was like, she was like, I am here to support you. So it's kind of rude to me as a person here to support you. Like, if you need help, I'm here to help you. You don't have to announce that you're new. You're not new. You don't have to announce that you don't design, because we all know that. You've told us, so get it, like, come correctly, right? And so that was one of those tough moments where, when she said it, because I wanted to argue with her when she was like, you're not new. I was like, but I am. And she was like, you've been here more than 90 days. There are people who've been here shorter time than you. And I was like, so again, it was that reframing of the story I was telling myself that made me go, oh, wow, like, I can't argue with you. I can't argue with that logic. I am not new, actually. And so it changed the way I had to show up differently after that. So Shelly giving me that framework, and Julia giving me that feedback, that again, that and it was done in so much kindness. And again, she's one of the highest performers I've ever met. And she was like, I can't wait for you to stop trying to be me and your other peers, and lean into how you own this role, because you're very good at things. It's not going to look like mine. And I'm so excited for you to join the rest of your peers and understanding that you have something to contribute here. And it was just the kindest, realest conversation I got. I'm so grateful for it. It wasn't me looking for that. It was somebody going, let me help her, because I see something in her, and I'm really ready for her to stop. Right. It's annoying. She was just annoyed. But again, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that's why it's so important to have those people around you who are for you.
Yes.
That, because to your point, we see things which we think is the correct lens.
Yes.
But we don't necessarily know how we're coming across, or we don't know, maybe, something that we're believing that isn't accurate.
Yes.
And they're able to go, okay, I see you correctly. Let me help you. You're looking through the wrong lens.
Doing that. Yeah. And so, and I still had to kind of go through my own process with that, because I was like, okay, I hear her. I can't dispute that. And I was like, so now the work for me was, how do I show up now? Because I'm no longer able to hold that story, but I'm still having those feelings. So what I decided to do,
through it. Yes.
And this was the only thing that helped me was, I was like, Rosilyn, I hear everybody. I was like, so here, this was the self-talk I gave myself. I was like, go take the job description that you signed up to do. And if you see do like design, push pixels. If you see that in the job description, you get to own your story. If you do not see that, you must let it go. And so I went and got my job description and I read it, and it was like manage work streams, align stakeholders. It was all these things. I was like, I know how to do all these things. I know how to do all these things. And I was like, so every single time, truly, every single time I felt like I'm new, I'm terrified, I can't do this job, whatever I felt, I would go read your job description, Rosilyn. Go read your job description. And I would read it over and over again and go, there is no reason why you can't do this job except you're in your own head. And once I got that, it changed the way I showed up. I was like, the actual job that I've signed up to do, I bullet by bullet, literally, there was not a single bullet on the job description that was like something that I couldn't do in that day, like that day, that particular moment. I was like, okay. So when I came to my team, I know that's like a lot of background information, but when it came to actually managing the team, again, there's that imposter syndrome. But I was like, what do I want to do? How is my leadership? How do I want my tenure to be kind of characterized? And so I told the team, here's my job, right? And here's what I want you to hold me accountable for. I will never do your job, right? And I was like, so that means that if you're going to be out of office, we need to have a plan for that. So I wanted to be very transparent, because there are people that are like, this person is managing me and they can't even do my job. And I was like, so we're going to solve that, because I don't want to, there was a part for me to kind of manage through, but I was also like, if somebody on the team feels like, oh, and she can't do my job. And so I made sure, I was like, this is what my job is, just so you know, just to be very clear. And in a more human way, I was like, you guys are the doers and my job is to provide space for you to do. I was like, that is my job. So whether that is blocking and tackling, so you don't have meetings interrupting your day, I want you to have uninterrupted design time. I want to make sure you get visibility with leadership. I want to make sure you have the resources you need. All of those things, that is my job. And I'm going to get out of your way. And I would also say to them, truly, I would say you should be the most knowledgeable about what you're managing, actually, because that is actually your job, right? So it's like, I have a different view. I have a different lens of what's going on within the organization. And that is my job. And I have to understand what we're talking about. But when I'm talking to you, I'm looking to you as the subject matter expert. And again, the best thing was it empowered them. It made these people show them the way that I just had this, I guess, lack of trust for people's desire to do the things, right? And every single body, and also they were like, yeah, I don't want your job because I like being a doer. So it was like good.
Yes.
I like doing your job because it's making it easier for me to do the job I want to do. So you please do your job well. Get out of my way so you can do those. Keep 10 meetings off my calendar, please. Right? So it became that. And it so we kind of, there was a respect for one another that ended up being there. Respect for each other's roles.
Yeah, it's so good. I feel like you just have so many gold nuggets in what you said, which is so good. Empowering and giving space.
Yes.
And I love how you set very clear, like, expectations with your team. So they knew there was no shadow of a doubt what you were expecting from them. And then in the reverse, what they could expect from you.
Yes. And hold me accountable to that. And so it's like, I think as a leader, I'm not an overlord. Like my role is important for this system to work just as much as your role. And we have an accountability to one another. So you are accountable. Like if you see me missing the mark in what is actually my job, you actually need to let me know, because that's actually gonna harm us all ultimately, right? And so kind of giving them that freedom and that psychological safety to know that wasn't just lip service, right? Like, no, it is much more important to me that we all succeed than it is for you to stroke my ego. I'm okay. Like, I don't need, you know what I mean? I don't need that. I need us to win, right? And be honest about that, right?
Yes. Oh, that is so good. Okay, I feel like we could talk all day long, Rosa. Wonderful experience and analogies and stories, which I think are so applicable that people can learn from. But as I love just talking about your corporate roles. I think that is so great. But I would also love, while I have you, to also be able to talk about your experience in nonprofit, where you are the president and you have a board or a team of people who are volunteers.
Yes.
And so I would also love just to talk about what does that look like to lead in that space, because it's very different, I can imagine, than a corporate space.
It is, you know what's funny? So it is very different. The biggest difference is obviously in one arena, people are getting paid. In another arena, they are not. Like this role as president is unpaid. Every single volunteer is unpaid. So I think the challenge there is like you feel more pressure to engage the team than like, I mean, just your retention rate, right? So we can't train all of these volunteers and they're out the door as quickly as possible, and that's just a bigger risk than in a corporate environment. But from a leadership perspective, what I've learned is it's all people. And I think if you care about the folks, if you care about the people, it's not that different of an approach. And what I've learned most, and I think I learned this during my corporate experience, but it's like making sure, and this came from Shelley, creating that vision, creating that alignment. And I think setting those expectations is the most critical piece in creating psychological safety, right? I think psychological safety is the most important, and making sure people understand that I am in this role. It's a different skill set than your role, and definitely being transparent about the areas where I am not great. So everybody in that volunteer position, everybody understands that they are critical. They are just as critical. Their role is just as critical, you know, as my role. It's not it's not that overlord type feel. And I think and also like because the board, we are actually new. I'll say that this time we are actually new. We've only been a few months in, kind of, and it's been and I find myself constantly saying, guys, we're building the train as we drive it, right? We're in that process, but being honest and saying, guys, that is, you show me 12 people put together, and there's going to be that friction. So I kind of, the analogy I use for that is kind of when you're on a flight and there's turbulence. If there's just turbulence out of nowhere, chaos, it's insane, you're stressed out. But when the pilot comes on and says, hey, we're about to have some turbulence, this is how long that turbulence will last, we'll let you know when you're safe, right? And so I try to do that with the board. I go, so right now, because it is a lot of building the train as we go, we're learning each other, we're learning the organization, we have to abide by these bylaws from national. There's so much going on. And so I told them transparently, guys, it's gonna be a rough ride through the end of the year. Rough ride. Like,
hold on.
Yeah, it's going to be a rough ride. A lot of the things that should be implemented would be too disruptive but through the end of the year. So we'll roll them out in a respectful way that doesn't disrupt us right now any more than we need to. But giving that expectation that you can expect that through the end of the year, this won't be the most fun experience, but it will be formative because we are getting to know each other. Like, guys, like we've had some situations where I'm like, guys, I can't wait till we look back on this and think about how funny it is that this happened, right? But we're bonding, but I'm like, it's gonna be a rough ride. And I think people appreciate that transparency and the fact that I'm like, I don't know all the answers. I want you guys to give me support and give me answers, and let's work through those, right? Because again, your role is event coordination. My role is the governance of this local chapter of a national organization. It does not, it's not the same. It's not very creative. It's truly governance. And so letting them know, I'm going to do the governance part so you can do the fun event creation, right? Like, so kind of just letting them know, kind of, somebody has to look at those bylaws, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Although that's riveting.
I know. Oh.
Oh, well, I know our time is wrapping up, but I feel like there's been this like thread throughout everything that you've said, which I feel like is one of the things that I stand on. But it's like everybody, every team member, every leader, every human being wants to be seen.
Yes.
They want to be known. They want to know that they belong and that they are a part of something bigger.
Yes.
And so I just love, Roz, hearing all of your stories, because I feel like you exemplify that as a leader. And I think that's one of the reasons why going from corporate to your nonprofit is maybe a little less rocky than maybe others because you value your people and your people know that on all sides. So I just love all your stories and your example. Thank you so much for coming on. Really quick, if anyone wanted to connect with you or follow you, how could they do that?
I would say LinkedIn is the best way. LinkedIn is my preferred social media platform of choice. So connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message. I am a chatty Cathy. So I always love meeting new folks and collaborating on things. So absolutely reach out on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, Roz, thanks again so much. And again, if you want to connect with Rosilyn, highly recommend doing so. Do it through LinkedIn. And thanks again.